Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
All righty. So, today's Dharma talk is on the sixth enlightenment factor. So, today we'll be discussing concentration, or samadhi in Pali. And let's go back a day where we were talking about tranquility. So, there was a little bit, someone mentioned, I think it was Anne, about how tranquility arose, and then there was a kind of an arising of concentration, the beginnings of concentration that comes up at the same time. And so, and this is because it's only the tranquilized mind that can easily concentrate on an object of meditation. You need to have a quiet mind to focus on your object of meditation. The calm, concentrated mind sees things as they really are. The unified mind is able to inhibit the five hindrances. Anne brought up the five hindrances yesterday, and we'll talk a little bit about those too in terms of concentration. So it is concentration that steadies the mind and causes it to be unmoved and undisturbed. Correct practice of samadhi maintains the mind and the mental properties in a state of balance. So the mind is more balanced. It's like a steady hand holding a pair of scales. It's just keeping things in balance. Right concentration then dispels passions that disturb the mind and brings purity and placidity of mind. A concentrated mind is not distracted by objects. So when we're talking about it being focused, in samadhi, it's a very focused mind, and it is a one-pointed focus, one-pointed or focused on one object, and it just kind of stays there, and other things arise, and it's not, the mind doesn't take it up. And the concentration of the highest type cannot be disturbed under the most adverse circumstances. So you can imagine what that's like. You're not disturbed at all because of this one-pointed concentration. So one who is intent on samadhi should develop a love of virtue or sila, for it is virtue that nourishes mental life and makes it coherent and calm. Of course, that makes sense, because if you're, say, following the precepts, you're not going to be concerned about how to make decisions. You've already got a set of beings, set of way of doing things. So you won't get messed up, get confused, and think, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? There's a lot of things that are kind of cleared out with sila, but these decisions are more readily made because you have something to hold on to, which is the precepts. So it makes the mind more coherent and calm, equable, and full of rich content. The unrestrained mind, on the other hand, dissipates itself in frivolous activity. It just goes off, right? So many are the impediments, however, that confront the yogi, an aspirant for enlightenment. But there are the five particular hindrances that hinder concentrated thought. Samadhi, that is samadhi, and instructs the way to deliverance from samsara. In the teachings of the Buddha, they are known as panca nirvarana, or the five hindrances. And This term denotes that which hinders or obstructs mental development. And they are hindrances because they completely close in, cut off, and obstruct us. They close the door to deliverance. So again, sensual desire, ill will, dullness and drowsiness or stupor or torpor, restlessness and worry, and then doubt. So in sensual desire or intense thirst for either possessions or satisfaction of base desires is the first that binds humans to samsara and repeated wandering and closes the door to deliverance. So what is sensuality? Where does this craving arise and take root? According to the Satipatthana Sutta, where there is the delightful and the pleasurable, that's where craving arises and takes root. So forms, if you remember, again, thinking of the little exercise we did with the 5 aggregates, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and ideas are delightful and pleasurable. And that's where the craving arises and takes root. Craving, when obstructed by some cause, is transformed to frustration and wrath. So then you have more problems. From craving arises grief. From craving arises fear. To one who is free from craving, there is no grief. Whence fear? It's from the Dhammapada. The second one is ill will, hatred, or aversion. Humans naturally revolt against the unpleasant and the disagreeable, and they also become depressed by them. To be separated from the loved is painful, and equally, the union with the loathed, things that you hate. Even small trifles, a disagreeable dish, an unpleasant drink, unloving demeanor, and hundreds of other things that cause indignation by us humans. Of course, this is wrong thinking and this is unsystematic reflection that brings on about hatred. And hatred breeds hatred and clouds one's vision. It distorts the entire mind and its properties, and thus hinders the awakening to truth and blocks the way to freedom. This lust and hatred based on ignorance is the crowning corruption of all our madness. It's the root causes of strife and dissension between people and between nations. And dullness and drowsiness. Dullness retards mental development and makes the mind inert, like butter too stiff to spread or molasses sticking to a spoon. Drowsiness, a dangerous enemy of mental development. Drowsiness becomes callous indifference. There's drowsiness, and then callous indifference arises. And so a lack of character is a fatal block to righteousness and freedom. The fourth, restlessness and worry. The guilty and impatient suffer from this hindrance. The mental agitation impedes meditation and blocks the upward path. Equally problematic is mental worry. People often repent over evil actions. This is something that is not praised by the Buddha. It's already happened, so basically forget about it. It's better to try not to repeat such unwholesome deeds instead of worrying about what has happened. Others worry over good deeds omitted and duties left undone. This serves no purpose either. But rather, the Buddha recommends we focus on doing good deeds and not worry about what we shoulda, woulda, coulda. This mental unsteadiness hinders mental progress, this process. And of course, the last one is doubt, suffering from dire disease, this doubt. Until and unless one sheds one's doubts, one will continue to suffer. As long as he or she continues this process, they will take a cynical view of things, which is very detrimental to mental development. This hindrance is the inability to decide anything definitively, comprises doubt about attaining the jhanas, concentrated thought. So you just get stuck in the water with the hindrances and can't move to another level, a deeper level of meditation. The yogi who attains the jhanas, and the jhanas is it's another level of mind that's beyond the beyond samadhi. It's a more absorbed state, and there's different levels. Anyway, the yogi who attains the jhanas, that is, goes through these higher levels, usually it's about 4, although I understand there's up to 8 of them, inhibits the 5 hindrances by the 5 factors of jhanas. So the sensual desire, then the antidote for it is this one-pointed or focus or unification of the mind, which is where the samadhi comes in. The ill will is relieved by joy, as Anne was mentioning earlier. Dullness is aided with applied thought. So keeping your mind focused on the certain things, having a point to think about something. And restlessness, all that worry, is more about using sustained thought. But the attainment of the jhanas is not the end point. Rather, the jhanas lead to insight. And this insight is what eradicates the latent corruptions and attaining perfect purity. So long as impurities or taints exist in a person's latent mind, evil will continue to arise. The practitioner of the jhana's purpose is to attain insight, and thereby will commit no ill action, because the hindrances become inhibited. But latent impurities exist, so there's no absolute security for them. But the arhat is the so-called perfect one, wipes out all impurities and stops samsara. This is, you probably have heard this. This is this part where we go through the dispassion, the cessation, and the end of, the Eightfold Path, of course, is part of that. So these people who have passed through this whole process, have theoretically wiped out all impurities and stopped samsara. And the noble life is perfected and there's no rebirth. And again, this is the way it's written about in the Satipatthana Sutta. In terms of us doing these practices, I don't think we're going to have any perfect human beings. It's just kind of I don't think that's going to happen. But in following these practices and moving through this process through meditation, and then also having our practicing the different skills when we're off the cushion, we can have moments, enlightening moments. We can have that, and we can have clarity, but it's not a forever. Oh, I'm enlightened, and here I don't have to worry about anything anymore. That's not the case. I don't believe. There are very few people that would be in that position. So, a sincere student cloisters himself off from sense attractions, bent on deep study, and holds fast to studies. This person fixes his mind on the subject of meditation, and by struggle and unceasing effort, inhibits the 5 hindrances and gradually reaches all 4 jhanas. Then in samadhi, This person, one, turns his mind to the understanding of reality in the highest sense. And then he cultivates intuitional insight. Through Vipassana insight, one understands the real nature of all component and conditioned things, component and constructive. Vipassana, or insight, helps one to see things as they truly are. See the truth face to face and comprehends that all tones are just variations struck on the one chord that runs through life, the chord made up of anicca, dukkha, anatta, that is, impermanence, suffering, and no self. So this is where we can actually see this. And I think that we get a sense of this all the time. But in closer meditation, in this samadhi, we get a much stronger sense of it. This is from the Dhammapada, again, 373. To the bhikkhu who has retired to a secluded spot. Oh, hold on a second. So the yoga gains insight into true nature of the world he has clung to for so long. He breaks through the eggshell of ignorance to the hypercosmic. With that final catharsis, he reaches a state where dawns for him the light of nirvana, the calm beyond words, the unshakable deliverance of the mind, and the world holds nothing more for this person. To the bhikkhu who has retired to a secluded spot, whose mind is calmed and who clearly discerns the Dharma, there comes pure joy and happiness transcending that of humans. So let's go to a more practical side of this. So we have all sorts of practices, one of which we've been practicing during this week, the Anapanasati, which is a really good meditation for reaching one-pointed concentration. I don't know if you guys have experienced that at all by the practices you've been doing in the morning, but with time, that happens. It's you'll notice it, that practice leads to that. So concentration is the common translation of the complex word samadhi, which describes the state of immersion, deep stability of attention, and one-pointedness that develop primarily in meditation. Immersion refers specifically to the 4 jhanas, states of meditation that can arise when the hindrances are absent, as we mentioned just a second ago, and tranquility and steadiness are strong. The jhanas begin with states where active thought and investigation are needed to keep attention steady. So this is why the 7 factors go from one to another, and one assists. You go through the first one, mindfulness, which assists you in investigation. In investigation, then you gain energy, and the energy or right effort helps for going up to joy. That creates joy, and then the joy, you work with that, and that leads to tranquility, and then the tranquility in turn brings you to samadhi, to settling again. Okay. So samadhi is also used to describe the daily life states of flow and effortlessness, the engagement outside of formal meditation, states in which pleasure and ease support sustained clarity of mind. We're almost through. So this is another source that talks about concentration. Let me go to, we're going to be reading in a minute, the Jiju's samadhi, self-fulfilling samadhi in a minute. And I think if we pay close attention to what it says in that particular sutta, it describes the same process we're talking about. Dogen explains it really well. And there's a line in there that I think of a lot, is this dropping away body and mind. And this is what happens in deep concentration and in samadhi in particular. So what does that actually mean, dropping away body and mind? Well, it's another way of looking at it is we are dropping away our attachments to our identity. We're dropping away, we're kind of de-selfing, right? So the body and mind, we are dropping it away in terms of its connection to, grasping. We're letting loose of our grasping and clinging. That's what we're doing in this section. And we're able to do it because we're such a concentrated state that the possibility of being drawn off by the hindrances is much less just because of our focus, the strong focus that we're in. So, so as we read that, we'll look closer. Just pay attention to how he's talking about it, and how he talks about through samadhi. Then we have realization, we have practice and realization. It goes on. So anyway, this is what samadhi is: the deep focus, concentration, and the capacity to go beyond our normal way of doing things. And so we learn that through meditation, and then we learn to bring that into the world. And it may not be in a constant state again, but in a moment, something may arise in you and you don't know where it comes from, and you go into action with a totally skillful action, and it's not something that really you thought about, you just do. And that's samadhi. That's samadhi working. It sets us up to be able to do that. So, okay, I'll end there. And are there any particular questions about that? Yes, Anne.
I have a question about the evolution or the development of clinging from pleasantness. That it seems to me there's an interim or an alternative step that you could go from appreciation or deliciousness, pleasantness, to appreciation. Do you have to go to clinging? Or is that, it seems like these words don't address the possibility.
Yeah, so that's an important point. So the main thing is it's the attachment. So the pleasant stuff, there can be pleasant things in life, and we can appreciate them, and we should appreciate them. But it's when we have an expectation of them happening, when it has to happen, or we're not happy campers. So we've completely set up this thing of suffering because things are impermanent, for one thing, and just because our minds, the way we are, we say, okay, I want this to go well, and sometimes it doesn't. So is the world going to be ruined because of it? And a lot of times we do ruin our day because it didn't go as we had hoped. People didn't respond the way you had hoped. Whatever it may be that you're talking about. So that's the main thing, and that's why there's a great discussion about disenchantment, for one thing. Disenchantment from the standpoint of, don't be caught up in and don't get into grasping onto things that you think are great. Enjoy them, but don't. Then with grasping becomes expectation and so forth. And so that's what's going to bring the more suffering. So we appreciate the day no matter how it goes. It's good to be alive. And we want something to happen. We hope things will happen, but we don't really have any control over it. So why worry about it? Although we probably will. But yeah, does that address it? Thank you.